I heard somebody say once, you can do anything you want to as long as you can live with those decisions. Problem was, I was not able. I was so uncomfortable not being honest about what was going on with me. And I felt like a fraud. And I felt no longer did I feel free anymore.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Greetings from Studio AA deep in the heart of Texas. That there was the voice of Sarah G again that you heard on this here episode number 271 of Sober Speak. And we are going to hear so much more from her in just a moment. But first things first. This here episode is brought to you by Jared and Laura and Tammy and Brad. What did they do? Well, Jared and Laura and Tammy and Brad went to our website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donate tab and they made a contribution, a donation. Thank you so much, Jared and Laura and Tammy and Brad, for helping us keep the virtual lights on. This here episode is coming right out to you. Let me just put a little social stuff here on the front end of this one and also tell you about our website real quick, and we will get right on into Sarah G. So if you are if you are not part of the super secret Facebook group, you can go to Facebook and look up Sober Speak Secret Group, ask for admission into the group, and we will get you on in there. If you're not following us on Instagram, we're at Sober Speak, all one word, and we are even on Pinterest. The lovely Cassandra keeps that up, and that is at Sober Speak on Pinterest if you want to follow us there. And I actually have things on Twitter, but quite honestly, I just don't check it too much. That's a sober_speak. But we are out there on Twitter. I just haven't quite figured out how to wrap my arms around that. I get questions all the time asking me, John, you have so many episodes, 271. Which episode should I listen to first? Well, we have a list on our website. If you go to www.soberspeak.com and then you click on the tab that says Top Episodes. This is not really the top episodes from a judgment perspective. It's just the most listened to episodes. And I think actually one year I did send out an email and people voted on the top episodes. But anyway, you can go there and pick out some episodes from that list. All right, now on to Sarah G. This is Sarah G part 2. We had some fun and a lot of good discussion last time with Sarah G on part 1. You can go back and listen to that at your leisure. But this one is called Changing a Sobriety Date. So we left off last week with Sarah's, I guess you call it a ceremony, where she burnt her big book in a fire pit because she had decided, with the help of a professor friend of hers that AA was indeed a cult. If you remember, however, she was drunk and slurring her words while filming this ceremony. So last week was really just the beginning of her journey into recovery, and this week we finish up. Sarah discusses what it means to change a sobriety date in sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous, and how gut-wrenching that experience can be, and much, much more. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sarah G, and we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this here episode. Enjoy, Sarah. Okay. By the way, I just have to ask you, when we started this today, I could tell you were very nervous, or it seemed like you were. Maybe you weren't, but I've seen you many times, and your face was, it just looked like you were like, "Oh no, what am I getting myself into here?" But you've really lightened up. So, is this like anything like you thought it was going to be?
I think it's better than I thought it was going to be. I think it's more comfortable. I feel
more comfortable.
Like easy. It's feel like it's easy talking to
right,
you. So.
Right. It's just we're having like I told you before. It's like we're having a conversation over coffee or whatever. Okay. All right. So, so I keep getting you off track with these crazy questions. So, all right. So, you said you were going to back up. And you wanted to tell me about your experience with being engaged to this guy. And I think we were going to go forward from there. Do you have any idea why we were talking about that?
Okay. I think you would ask me about,
this is,
I don't know.
That's all right. This is real podcasting, folks. And I, sometimes I go back and edit this stuff out, but I'm not going to edit that out. I kind of like it when it gets real, like when my kids walk in and stuff like that. But anyway, all right, so let's go forward. So now you've had your second child. Mm-hmm. We already talked about being a little overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. So take me forward from when you had your second child.
Okay. So after having him, I immediately got 6 weeks on this to the day I got my tubes tied because I didn't want to have any more children. And they prescribed me some pain medication.
Is 6 weeks the recommended time where you can get the tubes tied? Is that how
That's
it works?
what my physician said was the very first day that they could do it.
Because I could have sworn with my wife, they said, well, she had a C-section though. They could do it all like at the same time, like a combo platter, basically. So anyway, but nonetheless, it has nothing to do with the recovery. So you get your tube tied 6 weeks, and then what?
And they prescribed me some pain medication for that surgery, and I really didn't get off the pain medication for a long time after that.
Okay.
So
and talk to me about also your relationship with like alcohol and drugs and, pain meds and all that sort of stuff. Like, has there always been like a go-to for you? Do you feel like one is more prevalent than others? I know you experienced a lot of things, especially when you're in that hotel, but talk to me about that.
So I think to me, what has always been the scariest to me and the most dangerous has been the alcohol, because the way that I drank in the past was just beyond anything I could imagine. It was so out of control and so disgusting and dangerous, and that it was really, really, really scary. And I think that's one of the reasons that I started to try other things, because I was so out of control when I drank that I was afraid I was going to die.
Okay.
So I turned to pills and other types of drugs. I mean, I would try anything, to change the way I felt. Anything.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the 6 weeks again. So 6 weeks, You have the tubes tied. You don't. You start taking more pain pills than prescribed. What happens from there?
So then, this was the time, sort of, when they started kind of cracking down on prescriptions, and they weren't as easy to. Weren't as quick to prescribe narcotics anymore. And so I didn't know how I was going to get them. And I ended up doing some research and finding out that you could order anything you wanted to off the dark web.
Oh, this is interesting. So like so I've heard of the dark web. I've never had to find it myself. So how, just curious, how do you find the dark web? Do you type in dark web?
No, it took me about 2 weeks to figure everything out.
Okay.
I don't want to go into that because I don't want,
Right, yeah, and we don't want people doing it either. But somehow, somewhere, you found the dark web. And you're sharp with computers and all that sort of stuff. So it took you 2 weeks, though, to get to the bottom of it. So you find the dark web, and then what?
And essentially what happened was I started getting pure fentanyl delivered to my front door.
Wow. My goodness, I didn't even know that was possible. Okay, so you're getting the fentanyl delivered to your front door. Does and you're married at this time, right? Does your husband know this is going on? Okay. All right, so at some point, I think there was a breaking point there with your husband, and I think he came home at one point. Talk to me about that.
So I had multiple overdoses. And
how old are your kids at this time?
They're babies. I mean, they're still really, really young. Okay. And essentially what happened was he came home and I was laying underneath my son's high chair. And my eyes were rolling back in my head and I was turning blue. And my other son the other baby was just crying. And he filmed this whole thing. So I've seen it numerous times, but, and basically what happened was I was sweeping underneath his high chair after I fed him and, I overdosed and he found me underneath his high chair.
Any idea how long you were there?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I understand. All right, so he finds you. You're under the high chair. What happened after that? Well, I mean, did you separate? Did you get into recovery? What's going on now?
So, I mean, I was so out of control, and so addicted to drugs that my mom came in town. She took me to the hospital, and I still had some of the stuff left over. And sitting there in the waiting room with her. Go to the bathroom. She can't find me. I was on the phone with my therapist at the time and mom said I'd been in the bathroom for a while and she gets a call from my therapist that she needs to go find me because I was in the bathroom doing more of what I had just overdosed on at my house and I'd overdosed in the ER bathroom. So I was rushed back to a room and they gave me Narcan 2 or 3 times. Okay, and Narcan, remind me, that is something to help save your life. Yeah, it counteracts the overdose. Okay. From opioids. Okay. It did it. It worked, obviously. Yeah, I mean, it saved my life. Okay. Yeah. All right, so let's just go forward from there. Like, did you end up, did the lights come on at that time or what ultimately got you back on the road to recovery, if you will? So I think that I was so close to death at that moment, and waking up literally when you said, did the lights come on? I mean, I remember just being awakened from the overdose and just looking up at these bright lights shining down on my face. And I just, the first thing that I thought was, oh my gosh, I almost left my 2 little boys without a mother. And it was just surreal. But addiction is so powerful, because just a few seconds after that, I thought, I hope that they didn't find what was still in my purse. Right. So, I mean, you have this, duality of within us, of what we know is the right thing and, and the addiction. Okay. So, all right. So I know that there was a point there to where you ended up getting back in the programs. I think you said, I'm going to do whatever it is I need just to
to get my sons back, but I'm fuzzy on what happened
Okay,
between that point and that.
so right after that, basically not long after that, my husband and I were kind of having major problems. He wanted me to get sober. I wasn't quite ready yet, and
was he sober at the time?
He
also,
was.
Okay, gotcha.
He was sober, and basically what he said was, you either go get help or you need to move on. Because he wanted me to be sober, and so I ended up checking into a facility because of that. I didn't want to be there, but I really didn't have any other option at that time. So that's what I did. And I think finally going there, getting away from it long enough to realize that I had these two little boys and they needed me, and I needed to be, there for them and be a part of their lives and be able to take care of them. And I wasn't near that at this point. And so I think for the first time, that moment of clarity hit me that you are a mom now. And I was willing to, at that point, to do whatever it took to be there for them.
And so what was whatever it took? What kind of, I'm sure there was, legal pieces of this, and then your personal journey. What was going on during that time?
Yeah. So while I was in treatment, my husband at the time filed for divorce. So we were getting divorced. I knew that. And, I had to figure.
How did that hit you at the time? I'm just curious. Do you remember?
It was devastating. It was devastating. I didn't think, this treatment center was kind of like up on a hill a little bit, and the parking lot to where all the visitors would come was down at the bottom of this hill. And I was sitting up at the top and I saw his truck and I thought, oh my gosh, he's come to visit me. And I was excited. So I kind of rushed down to the hill and I saw him and I was like, something is not right. And he handed me this yellow folder and it was divorce papers. Yeah. And it was devastating.
So not only are you thinking about your children and your relationship with them and having to fight for that, and now your husband's coming and he's filing divorce, and wow. I mean, I could see that in your emotion and your face there when you just described that. So, all right. So you went through all the shock and awe of that. Then what was the plan next?
So basically, I had to, with my therapist and my support at the treatment center, had to figure out what I was going to do when I got out of there. And obviously, with the stories that I've just told you, it wasn't looking good for me getting out of there and being able to be a mom, because what he had against me was not good,
Including that video.
Exactly. And so I knew that I had a major battle ahead of me as far as being able to have them in my life the way that I was hoping to. So I ended up going to sober living for 3 months. I ended up finding a job, just starting from the bottom. I didn't have much to start with. So I just scraped and, I just did what I needed to do. I worked very, very hard and saved up money, and every penny that I made pretty much, went to my fund to eventually get my kids back.
Illegal fund?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And what are your parents doing at this time? Are they still kind of hands off, if you will?
No, my parents were. So at this time too, my dad got sick with cancer and he was not doing very well. And, but I mean, my dad in particular is just amazing. I had to be supervised in a lot of my visits, and he would drive 2.5 hours to Dallas so that he could be there for, a couple of hours so that I could see them. And because he wanted me to be able to see them, and just a lot of love and support.
Oh my goodness. All right. So you're jumping through all the hoops. You're putting money into the legal fund. You have the support of your family. Take me through some major milestones during that time. And I'm assuming you're staying sober at this point, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. staying sober, meetings every day, sponsor, working the steps. I mean, I was doing everything that the treatment center and people in AA were telling me to do. I did it, I did it. And, just, continued to work and eventually got my own little place. And, like I said, I had to jump through a lot of hoops. So, I mean, it started slow. It started like an hour on the weekends. I got my kids, and it was 2 hours on the weekends supervised. Then it was an hour unsupervised, and it was 2 hours unsupervised. Drug tests every couple weeks. Then it was, I could finally have them overnights on the weekends, and eventually ended up getting full custody back of them.
Okay, and so we've already talked about you meeting him, but at some point, Mr. David G comes into the picture here. Where was he at the beginning of that process? The middle, the end?
The middle.
Okay.
So yeah, when I met David, it was one of the lowest points of my life because I was without my kids, and it was just so painful to be separated from them.
Okay, so Mr. Bumble comes into the picture while you're in the middle of this. You're in abject pain from being separated from your children. However, there's some ray of hope because you're sober at this time. And how long was it before you got? How long was it before you got your kids back, the full custody?
I was about a year sober.
Okay. And then I know that obviously he's your husband now, so you guys ended up getting married. Where was it during that time that y'all got married?
So I was about 2 years sober when we got married.
Okay. All right, so you're 2 years sober, y'all got married. Anything you want to say about that particular area, or I just want to go on past that or not? I mean, if there's something you want to say, I just want to make sure I don't skip it.
I mean, David was a rock for me during that period. Just such an example of AA, of what you have to do every day to stay sober. Just so supportive in every single way. There is no way I could have made it through that time without him. It was like God sent an angel, to be there. And I mean, I can never really put into words the support that I got from him.
And he was, as you know, going through some of his own difficulties. And I think he feels the same way. In fact, I know he feels the same way about you. So, all right. So you're married to David. And then now I kind of want to get into the, so you've been through a period lately. So you were sober for
5.5 years.
5.5 years. I didn't realize it was that long. I've known you for quite some time. All right. So you're sober for 5.5 years. So take me through, I don't know, you tell me what you want to say about that 5.5 years, what happened there, what changed, and why your sobriety date is where it is now.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically the Reader's Digest version is that, for the first couple of years, I was all in, just very, very involved in AA and, trying to do exactly what I was supposed to do to stay sober and, doing all the things that we say to do, meetings, sponsorship, praying, meditating, all that stuff, right? Helping others. And that went well for a while, and then basically what happened was I was physically sick with several different things. I got reinfected with Epstein-Barr virus and then was diagnosed with several autoimmune disorders after that were really life-changing.
Right. And that just kind of that just came on all of the...
After being sick with the Epstein-Barr virus.
Oh, so the Epstein-Barr virus is what prompted all this stuff.
Yes.
And remind me, so I've heard of Epstein-Barr.
It's the virus that causes the monovirus. So when you have it as a kid, when you have mono as a kid, you always have that virus within you, but it's dormant.
Yeah. My daughter has gotten that. the mono. And so you're saying that it can like
reactivate.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So it reactivated in you, and you got that like, so how do you know it's not just like a bad cold?
It's a test, a blood test.
All right. So you go in, you get the blood test, it's reactivated. And then how long after that were you diagnosed with the autoimmune diseases?
At the same time.
Oh, at the same time. Okay.
Because I told my doctor, I was like, something is seriously wrong with me. Please help me to figure it out. And so they ran just tons of tests. I had no clue. I didn't even think Epstein-Barr virus, but she happened to run that test and found that.
Gotcha.
And they can tell, if it's active, if it's been active recent. I mean, it's pretty detailed. So that's when they found out that, yes, I had just had a reinfection of Epstein-Barr. And she said that a lot of times that can cause autoimmune disorders to quote unquote, like kind of turn on. Okay.
And what were the symptoms you were having that made you go in and say, you've got to, check me out here. Something's not right. Was it fatigue or?
Oh, I was exhaustion. I would throw up all the time. I was just, my whole body hurt. Just like, I felt like I had the flu constantly. Sore throats, coughing sometimes. But really, I mean, it was just a lot of, I would throw up all the time.
And you're pretty active. You're really active. And so I'm assuming this was like distressful. Even if you're not active, it'd be distressful. But okay, so you get diagnosed with these autoimmune diseases and I'm
in pain all the time, like to the point where I was having trouble living my life. And so eventually what happened was I got prescribed some medications, some pain medications that at the time, one could argue that I really did need them, but, I just got to a place where I felt so hopeless about my physical health, and obviously that makes you feel depressed and down. And I just really, didn't know what to do. And I went back to what I had known all along when I was, a teenager and in my 20s. Which was I needed to change the way I felt, and I had access to it. I was prescribed the medication, and I started to take more. First I started to take them closer together than I should have. So my next dose would become earlier and earlier. And then gradually I would increase my dose without the doctor's permission. And I was all the while, still maintaining my sobriety in public.
So is this like a month period, 3 months, 6 months? Like how long is this?
I would probably 6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Total.
And so when you would say your sobriety date, like in meetings or whatever, would you have some sort of second thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I was very torn about it because I had talked to my sponsor at the time, about it. And I guess I probably kind of convinced her. I was honest with her, but, convinced her that I didn't need to change my sobriety date, and I got her to sign off on that. And so I felt like I was doing the right thing. I was okay. But the more and more the more time passed, and I started to realize that, I heard somebody say once, you can do anything you want to as long as you can live with those decisions. And the problem was, I was not able. I was so uncomfortable not being honest about what was going on with me. And I felt like a fraud. And I felt no longer did I feel free anymore.
Okay, so at what point then did you, I guess, start to talk about it and say, there's something? At what point did you start to be open about it?
I was not open. I was talking to my therapist about it for a while before I actually changed my date. I almost every time we spoke, I would tell her that I was very conflicted about this for a lot of reasons. And it was one of the hardest things that I've had to do was to change that date. I was so tied to that date, and it was a part of my identity. I was so proud of the work that I had done during that time period, which none of that's been taken away from me.
Right.
But I felt like it had been, or I felt like it would be if I disclosed this information.
Right. And, yeah, so talk to me then a little bit about the fears that were wrapped up around the date and what was the former date, by the way? It was like,
it was January 17th of 2017.
Okay. So you have the January 17th, 2017. You're kind of holding on to that. And the reason that you are is there's fears wrapped around it. And I mean, dive a little bit deeper into the fears wrapped around that date, if you would.
So, and I said 5.5 years. It was 4.5 years. Sorry. My math is so terrible. But,
Okay.
So a lot of the fears I had it was a lot of different things. I think a lot of it had to do with my career at the time. I was in substance abuse field, and I felt like if everyone knew the truth, then I wouldn't have any future, any career. I'd lose my job. I'd lose respect in that field. And then, David and I owned a couple sober living homes, and I thought, who's going to want to send anybody to sober living here if one of the owners is just changed their sobriety date?
Right.
And I felt a lot of shame too about my husband, being sober for so long. Like, how would he feel about this? Was he going to be disappointed in me? Was he even going to want to be with me anymore? I had all kinds of things running through my head.
So talk about that a little. How was that discussion with David?
So I told David, and
what did you tell him? I
told him the truth. I said, yeah, I need to change my sobriety date. I don't.
Did he suspect it or know it, or was
David knew I was sick.
Yeah.
My friends knew I was not well, and so I think there was sort of like a fine line between is she really sick? Is this still the sickness, or is this something more? So I don't know necessarily. I don't think David knew. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So you tell him that you're going to change was that the conversation? I need to change my sobriety date, or was it, okay.
Yeah.
And then, okay, take me from there.
Yeah. So I told him what I felt like I needed to do, and in tears, a lot of shame and guilt about it. And his response was nothing what I would have expected. I don't know why, but he was just so supportive and loving and kind about it, and just so encouraging about me doing the right thing.
Okay. So then how did you change your sobriety date?
So then I went to a meeting, the next meeting I went to, and I just picked up a desire chip. David didn't know I was going to pick up this chip at this time, and I really didn't either, to be honest with you. They just ask if anybody, just like they do every meeting. And I just felt like I wanted to be free again. Yeah. And I felt like the only way I was going to be able to do that was to be just completely honest.
Yeah.
Despite the fear.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, I've listened to some guy, and I don't listen to him a lot, but I listened to a guy named Dax Shepard on the podcast, and there was a podcast he had called Day 7 or something like that. And he described the exact same thing exact same scenario that you're walking through. And that was another reason I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I'm hoping that somebody somewhere is going to hear this and say, I just need to do the right thing, whatever it is for them. Like you said, we can all, as long as, would you say earlier, like as long as we can live with our decisions.
Yeah, you can do anything you want to if you can live with them.
Exactly. But I got a feeling there's going to be some people listening to this, right, that have that need to kind of look inside and say, why am I doing this? All right, so what was the aftermath of that? And when I say the aftermath, I'm assuming, you're like sponsoring people at the time, you're thinking about your job. Did it turn out, like, I know you had all these fears on the front end. Did it turn out that way on the back end?
No, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
None of that stuff happened. nothing but good things have come from this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't mean, though, that every time we go around the room and say our sobriety date, I still don't feel a little pissed about it. You know, because it's just one of those things. I'm like, golly, I wish, but I do feel like that's going to fade with time.
Yeah.
But I will say that I feel free again.
And talk to me about that. So, like, what do you mean, like, okay, so obviously there was the jonesing, for lack of a better word, that was going on with the opioids and stuff. Did that subside once you came out with a new date?
I mean, I would say probably so. Yes. So it was a titration, you know, with the medication. It wasn't a cold turkey type thing, you know, but the thing is that I no longer had control over my medication. I wasn't able to just take it, and, you know, I needed help with that. I knew that. And that's where I asked for help with my husband and my sponsor.
Gotcha. And so when you say you felt free, you felt like you were being genuine, you were being vulnerable, you were being honest. Is that pretty much what it comes down to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I just felt all the time during that period of time that we just talked about. I mean, I felt this heaviness, this sense of just feeling lost, not belonging. Some hopelessness started to come back. You know, all those things that, like, once we get sober and start working the steps, all those things that start to slip away, you know, in a good way, they started to come back a little bit at a time. And I realized it's like I woke up one day and realized that I was living in so much darkness again internally. And I did not want to live like that anymore.
So to kind of wrap it up here, what sort of, is there a message you want to leave with people? Is there something in particular that you want to make sure that you think comes through as a central theme of your story?
I think that, you know, something that I know you and I have talked about it. I've talked to a few people about it, but something that I do want to say is that I do feel like at times we can get too tied to these dates, you know, these sobriety dates. And while it is a huge accomplishment and it's something to be celebrated, it also, there needs to be caution around it becoming our identity. And I think what happened to me was that I was so tied to that date that I felt like if I lost that, or if that were to change, then who would I be, and what would I be, and what would people think of me, and all of that, you know? And so I think that more than anything, what this has taught me is that all we have is today. And you know, like, you see people come in that have relapsed or need to change their date or whatever. And I mean, we don't see it a ton, but, you know, when we see people pick up those chips and we can see their faces and just like the despair and the shame that they feel when they pick up that chip, you know, I just want you guys and ladies, you know, you all to know that, like, we are celebrating you, you know. If you change your date, if you need to change your date or start over or whatever that looks like for you to be free, we celebrate that. And you're welcome to do that in AA and in recovery. And I'm just like so grateful that I, you know, and like, sorry for talking, you know, a little bit being long-winded here, but one thing also is that, you know, when I felt like I was going to be faced with so much judgment and shame, I have never felt more loved than the day that I changed my date. I was just absolutely just an outpouring of love and support.
Right.
So I think I have to look within and really do the right thing by me, you know, and do what feels right to me. If that's changing your date, great. If it's not, great. But I just had to follow my heart. And that's what I did. And that's what I'm trying to do each day.
Well, I am so glad we got together here today. I hope it was a good experience for you.
It was fun.
Good. I'm glad it was fun. I hope you're okay with me laughing at your some of your antics, if you will. Some of those are pretty funny. We always ended up with page 164 from the Big Book. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely, is it surely or surely? Surely. Have you ever heard the joke, don't call me Shirley, like from the airplane? I just thought of that for the very first time. So anyway, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge, like me and Sarah G, as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Oh man, I forgot to hit the record button. I'm just kidding.
I was like, oh my gosh.
That would be a drag.
Have you ever done that?
I have. And it sucks. Well, and I'll tell you more about that later. But anyway, God bless you. Thank you for joining me today, Sarah.
Thank you.
Once again, Sarah G., I so much enjoyed our time together. Thank you for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And if you are out there and you say to yourself, I really think a friend or family member should hear that episode and maybe Sarah's last episode as well, please take some time to pause your device, unless you're driving. Don't do that then. But pause your device, hit that little share button, and send that to the friend or family member. That episode may be just what they need to hear today. Now, on to a little bit of listener feedback. Rita writes in, and Rita says, good morning, 3 exclamation points. She must have had her coffee already. She says, my sober date is March 8th, 2022, and I live in Philadelphia, PA. I have a sponsor who knows she's my sponsor. That is kind of funny. I've had it before to where somebody comes up to me and says, hey, John M., I was talking to somebody the other day and they said that you were their sponsor, and I was glad to hear that. I'm scratching my head and said, I don't think I've talked to that guy in a couple years, but I'm glad he considers me a sponsor, I guess. Anyway, but I get that. A sponsor who knows she's your sponsor, Rita. Anyway, she says, I attended meetings 5 days a week, and I did 6.5 months of meetings every day. I'm on step 8 right now and excited to move on to step 9. I'm learning so much about myself through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I found Sober Speak on Spotify. Well, Rita, I'm glad you found us on Spotify, and I'm glad we can supplement your sobriety, and good luck. Let me see here. So now it'll be March 8th. So another few months, and you will be into 1 year sobriety. That sounds fantastic. I know we only do it one day at a time, but I'm just doing a little addition in my head. Rachel writes in, and Rachel says, hi, John. I just wanted to thank you for the introductions. Oh, so this is somebody who, in fact, I'm going to go to my phone here real quick after I read this, because Maria sent me out a text on this morning. Anyway, she says, I just wanted to thank you for the introductions. And what she's talking about here is I introduced Rachel to Maria. Maria has been on the podcast a couple of times before, and this lady was looking for some help along the way, somebody to talk to and somebody to guide her. So she says, I have spoken to Maria and she has introduced me to someone here in Manchester. So she lives in Manchester, England. Although I was drunk during my cell phone call with Maria, I've had a few of those myself before in the past, Rachel. She was lovely and understanding. Maria is who she's talking about. I have some days off the booze and attended my first online meeting yesterday. I fell back again today, but I'm having days off and working towards my goal is better than nothing at all, I suppose. It's a new day tomorrow. Thank you, and I look forward to more episodes of your podcast, Rachel. So let me also read to you what Maria sent to me earlier today. She says, to recap with Rachel, a woman in Manchester listens to a podcaster out of America, me, who reaches out to a fellow Texan, her, Maria, who reaches out to a friend in Manchester, who Maria knows, who connects with a suffering friend in Manchester. God must be smiling. I love my sobriety. That's great, Maria. And that is, gosh, think about how these connections go. And that's why we put this stuff out here and keep doing what we're doing. We just do the legwork and never know exactly where God is going to pick up and take over. And thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate Rachel, Maria, the whole 9 yards, whoever that other person is, your other friend in Manchester. I hope she's able to listen to this. Thanks, Rachel. Ryan writes in and he says, hi, John. I am from Sherwood Park, Alberta, Canada. I have just received my 9-month chip last week. I'm 33 and things finally came to a point where I needed to find a way to stop down the path of destruction I was on. I found some great people and meetings in Sherwood Park. My drive to work is an hour both ways, so I wanted to find a podcast on sobriety, and I stumbled across yours. I'm absolutely hooked. Every speaker has things that I can apply to my life and story. If I had to choose a favorite guest, I would say Matthew M., Charlie P. resonate with me, but David G. would be the one I felt I really identified with. Keep up the good work, John. You're touching so many lives with your great podcast, Ryan L. So David G, I think I copied, yes, in fact, I know I did. I copied you on this email to David G. And just so interesting, that was his wife that we just recorded an episode with here, Sarah G. So anyway, Ryan, thanks for writing in. I appreciate you. And thanks for all your good words about the guests and the podcast as well. Greg G writes in, and Greg G says, thank you for making a podcast that respects their traditions. Well, you're welcome, Greg G. He says, much appreciated. Respectfully, and he says, I think your listeners tune in to hear AA talks, in particular, the classics like Joe and Charlie. I appreciate the upfront banter, and he's talking about me, far less, and frankly dislike and fast forward through the informal conversations with alkies that some episodes feature. I love and appreciate the AA quote leads, unquote, and I think that makes your show unique as others do in my circle. For what it's worth, Greg G. out of Chicago, October 1982, and I'm assuming that's his sobriety date. I get it, Greg. It's not the first time I've heard it, but I got to tell you this, though, Greg. I love your tone, and I think that that is excellent way. That's an excellent way to write into, I don't want to call it critical, like just let your voice be heard. I will take it under consideration. I've taken a lot of things under consideration, but thank you for writing in and being vulnerable and upfront. MJ writes in, and MJ says, "Hi, John. I live in Washington State. I have been married for 32 years. I am very recent on my sober journey. My last time to drink was October 31st of 2022. Oh, so you're very recent. She said, "I had my last drink around 10 years old, and it was in 1974 at my cousin's wedding. I didn't really drink again until middle school. In high school, I would drink at parties, and sometimes I would shoot up an orange. Oh, not shoot up. I was going to say, shooting up. I would shoot up an orange with rum and take it to school." That's good. I don't think I've ever heard of that one. She said, "After marriage, I drank some, mostly on weekends and always in excess. We have 4 kids, ages 22 to 31. I didn't drink when I was pregnant or nursing for about 17 months of each pregnancy." 17 months of each. Oh, wait a sec. I'm kind of adding, isn't it, for 9 months apiece? Wouldn't that be 4? I don't know. The math is off to me, but nonetheless, she says, "I definitely look forward to when it was time to drink again. Funny thing, in 2 of the births, my labor nurse was named Margarita." At least her name wasn't like Whiskey Sour or something like that. Anyway, she said, "I told her as soon as I could I was having one of her to drink." I think around the time my mom passed in 2005, and that's when I started drinking every night. Well, at least the nights that I didn't have to take our kids to a dance, karate, gymnastics, or soccer. Another routine. She says, "About 2013, I started drinking even more. And by 2008, it was every night. I didn't have an on and off switch. In fact, I didn't want to stop drinking for the night. I haven't had a rock bottom drinking moment, but I pretty much drank until I black out or pass out. I guess about 6 months ago, I knew I was ready. I knew I was drinking way too much. My heart and head knew it was time to stop, but I wasn't ready. We had a big birthday bash for me over the Halloween weekend, and I told myself a week before the party, it was time. I would quit after the party. November 1st, I joined Reframe. And I don't know what Reframe is, but I am just going to assume that is some sort of a non-drinking program that helps people quit drinking. And she says, "Thinking now that I would just cut back instead of the NA plan." She said, "I was chickening out. I know I'm an alcoholic and I do not have control. Alcohol was in control of me, and it was going to take me down. I decided then and there I must quit, and I did. Someone on Reframe, so it must be an online thing, mentioned Sober Speak, and I started listening from the oldest to the newest. I like hearing other stories and how they have been sober. Every one of them reaches me, sometimes a little and sometimes a lot. I really thought Chad was funny. I like all the laughter." She's talking about, Chad is, the name of his episode is West Texas Tenor. And he was sometime within, I think, the first 10 or 15 episodes that I did. And Chad is funny. In fact, he always says, one of the things I like, is that this time of year, November and December, is our biggest membership drive for Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, it's funny, just in case you don't know, we really don't have membership drives. But if we were going to pick a time of year, this would be the time you want to bring people in. Anyway, she says, "I downloaded the big book and I started listening. I also bought a copy. First thing in the morning, I write my intention not to drink. If I do not do that, I know I won't. I do meditations, visualizations, and exercise. If I get triggered, I have a lot of things ready to go to. One of which is to go into my she shed and blast Peter Frampton. I like that. She says, thank you for making the podcast, exclamation point, exclamation point. And then she says, thank you for listening, exclamation point. And then she put in parentheses, Frasier. I'm assuming that, I remember that there was a TV show called Frasier, and I'm assuming that he would say, thanks for listening. But I'm not completely sure. And then she signs it MJ. P.S. I will follow you on Instagram when I can figure out how to change my name. So it must be a technical issue she's got going there. But MJ, muchas gracias. There's my bilinguality coming at everyone. I don't mean to show up everybody with my skills, but sometimes I just got to do it. All right, everybody, that is another episode. In conclusion, in the can, in the books, or on the books. So keep coming back. It works if you work it. Oh gosh, I can never remember the other thing I like to say. May God bless you and keep you until then. And then, as everyone knows, well, some of you may know, some of you may not care. I take this 1 week at a time. I hope to be back behind the golden mic next week. But if I'm not here, life will go on. You guys will find something else to listen to. I have no doubt in my mind. So anyway, love to all of you. Take care. Bye-bye.